As was said, I am a writer, I am a playwright, which I fell into quite on accident because I was simply not seeing myself represented on the stages and screens that I was being drawn to. I was going to school and living around people from around the globe, African Americans, Africans, South Asians, Latinos, and they were the most ambitious, hardworking people on the planet. And I was witness to that. But then I would turn on TV and turn on the news, and on the news, they would be calling them criminals and rapists and the scum of our country. And on, on TV shows and in movies, they were either the gang members or the drug dealers or the prison snitch or something like that. And that just wasn't what I was seeing in those communities. And it was very clear that the people who were putting those products out were not people coming out of those communities. And so I saw two paths open up. One being I can sit and I can complain and say, well, I'm not seeing myself represented, or I could pick up a pen and represent myself and represent my family and my peers. Because the only reason we have that term underrepresented is because not enough people are fighting to represent those groups, and not enough people are being led into the rooms and the spaces to tell those stories and to represent those groups. And so instead of waiting for someone to let me sit at the table, I just kind of got a hammer and nail and started building my own damn table and telling the stories that I wanted to tell and the stories I grew up around, because at the end of the day, no one can tell your story but you. And so I am so grateful for the mixed space for allowing me to come today and tell my story, a little bit of it. Today, I will be performing a monologue I wrote entitled Rabbits and Foxes. So yeah. Being Black while living in white spaces, surrounded by white faces, is equivalent to being a rabbit in a den of foxes. You either do your best to keep quiet and hide from the predators around you, or you get eaten on sight. The rabbit could also attempt to blend in with the foxes, growl like them, walk like them, eat what they eat, which would be their own kind. But for the sake of survival, who could blame the rabbit? Besides, it's not the rabbit who chose to be born a rabbit. That's just how it came out. The rabbit may live its entire life wanting to be a fox because no one messes with foxes, rarely. The fox owns his corner in the animal kingdom. It is defined as one that eats, not one that is likely to be eaten. But the rabbit comes into this life knowing that it is on the menu. Still, it has to come out to eat, move around to live, but who's to say that a fox isn't waiting at the exit of the rabbit hole for its next meal? And the rabbit is fast, but not fast enough for the fox to forget about it. And if the rabbit escapes, the fox will just go after its cousin or its brother. I am the rabbit, living in a den of foxes. I was not taught about my food chain in science class when I was a kid, and neither were you. It's a hard thing to explain, but when you grow up seeing the people around you live a certain kind of life and yours is anything but, you start wanting to be a fox. See, the fox walks around unafraid, and I wanted to do the same, and I did for a long time. I made the foxes believe that I was worthy to be one of them, and it felt great. The very idea of walking with them, being accepted, that is what made me safe in environments that would make my father feel like he was signing his own death sentence. I chose the college I did for these reasons. I talked to the people I talked to for these reasons. I wanted them to know that I was worthy, because for my entire life, I was told that nothing but how I should watch out and be cautious and stay home. And if I wanted to go to prison, I could in 2 seconds, but I didn't want to. So why should I be a prisoner in my own home with my own family in my own neighborhood? I found it to be a ridiculous idea. I wanted freedom like the slaves. That was then, when I was sheltered behind the closed doors of my masquerade home, that I didn't see that the plantation was just waiting on the other side. Being Black while living in white spaces, surrounded by white faces, is equivalent to being a rabbit in a den of foxes. Being Black while living in white spaces, surrounded by white faces, is equivalent to being a slave trying to sleep in the master's bed. trying to wear his clothes and hold his whip. It is wanting to be it's not wanting to be free, but to be liked by he who beats you. I sound smart now. I've always tried to sound smart, but the more we try to sound like something, the more likely it is that we are anything but. I wanted to join a frat, honestly, because I thought I'd have the best chance there. I mean, there were no other brothers who were brothers, and I figured there'd have to be some sort of affirmative action rule in place. I mean, you have to let at least one in, and these guys, they were loved. All the girls loved them. They were tan and rich, and I wanted that life. I wanted the fox life, and they could see that better than anyone else. So I went through the whole initiation process. No big deal. I faced harder belts against my body in life. This was no problem. I was doing it so that they'd love me and carry me after it was through. We got to the very last stage of the process, and everyone had a different assignment, as they called it, very collegiate way of phrasing. My assignment was to walk around campus, and anytime I saw a pretty white girl, I was to go up to her and in my best colored boy voice, tell her that I was a nigger. They wanted me to say that I was a happy, white woman loving nigger. And for the first time in my life, I said no. But not because I didn't think it was true, but because I had just never heard someone say it out loud. And I realized that I would never be a fox, even if I walked alongside them. I was a rabbit in their hole, and they had their forks and knives prepped for feeding. I said no. And they didn't like that. They didn't like that their rabbit was saying no, and so they taught me what happens when a brown rabbit says no. I remember when I was a kid, the special would come on cable, and it was all about racism and stuff, and this little black girl, she was being bullied, and the bullies put white shoe polish all over her face for the obvious reasons, and I thought that was the most animated, unrealistic, over-exaggerated idea ever put to screen, until I found myself looking at myself after having the exact same thing done to me. And I died that day. No one seemed to notice. No one seemed to care. After all, I was there. I was present, but I was dead. I had a hollow trunk inside my body, and no one said my name, not once. Because it is harder to spot a rabbit than it is to spot a fox. The week it happened is the week that everything else happened in my city, in the city I went to school in. I watched it all with my IMAX screen eyes. And I may be bitter, but it isn't enough. Breonna Taylor barbecues aren't enough. Police car, caravan, statues carved by Confederate carnivores being overturned by the ropes that used to be around my neck. It's not enough. So why did you shut up when it got too cold outside? But you don't know me, so you don't listen to me. I sound smart, though. So maybe one day, someone will close their eyes and only listen to my voice.